Good evening and welcome to week 4 of the Master Plan for Healthy Communities series. I'm hoping you've been enjoying the last 3 weeks, and I guess I'm making a bit of an assumption there that you've been with us for the last 4 weeks. If you have, we hope you've been enjoying the series so far. But out of interest, let's see whether we can find out. If this is your first week with us, so you've not seen any of the previous 3 weeks, I want you to put a 1 in the chat. If you're with us on Zoom, put a 1 in the chat, and in fact, put a 1 and the location that you are in currently. So if this is your first week here, then put a 1 in the chat, put the location where you're dialing in from, joining from. If it's actually your second week, so you were here last week and now you're here this week, if it's your second week, put a 2 in the chat and put where you are connecting from. Likewise, if this is your third week, then put a 3 in the chat and your location. And let's see if there's anyone that's with us, that's been with us for the entire 4 weeks. Put a 4 in the chat and your location. I'm going to see what I can just quickly have a look at it. Someone from Birmingham, is that Ellie? Am I looking right? 4th week coming in from Birmingham. I can see Valerie. Welcome this evening, Valerie. You've been here for 3 of the weeks. That's great. Thank you for coming back. Janice, 3rd week from London. Welcome, Janice. Oops, Valerie says it's 4 weeks. Listen, if you're like me, I can forget tomorrow. So if you've missed a week, that's not a problem. So welcome, Valerie. You're here for 4 weeks. Marlene, you've done 4 weeks from Manchester. Fantastic. Anyone else? How long did Mbele, 4 weeks. And you're from Angola. Welcome from Angola. And thank you for joining us. I'm not sure what time. You can tell me in the chat. What time is it in Angola, out of interest? You've been here for 4 weeks. That's Mbele, Valerie, Ellie, Janice. Anyone else? Oh, it's 7 p.m. Oh, right. I didn't know that. So Angola and BST time is the same. Yeah, absolutely. GMT time. Fantastic. Well, listen, wherever you're from, and as individuals join, welcome to week 4 of the Master Plan for Healthy Communities. And it really is great to see you here. If you, wherever you've joined from, and whenever you've joined, whenever you're here for the first week, second week, whatever, if you want copies of the recipes, that was week 2, and we also had some handouts from week 1, please put your name and your contact details in our chat. Yeah. So if you're looking for copies of the menus, we had Kathleen, who was here previously doing some healthy cooking recipes. You can still get hold of those. There'll be some handouts from week 1. They'll be available. And obviously, you'll want material from this week. So please put your name and contact details in the chat if you require any of the information. Okay, so tonight, or for this week, should I say, the presenter, I said to him earlier on this evening, he's producer cum presenter. Yeah, producer cum presenter. So Andre Crawford, he'll be no surprise to you. You'll have heard his voice and seen his face assisting in the previous weeks. But tonight we're going in a slightly different direction. Probably the best way to explain the direction of travel for this week is we're going to take a case study, unpick the case study, and apply some learning from it. There's some wisdom from it. We know we all face some common issues in life. One of them is mentioned on the flyer, if you've seen it, the issue of stress. Where do you go to? Who do you turn to? Who do you listen to? Who shouldn't you listen to? Are there some principles that you can apply? And I think the important point is that the principles based on the case study that we'll look at this week can be applied now. So this isn't a case study for case study's sake. It's a case study to give you another component in how you can live a healthy life for your betterment. That's what God wants. So I'm just going to ask you, wherever you are, just to bow your heads, close your eyes whilst I pray. And then the next voice you will hear will be Andre Crawford presenting tonight, Purpose, all about the issue of purpose. And it's coming from the man called Daniel. So let's just bow our heads. Lord God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather again this evening. And as we go through this case study, Lord, unpick it, make it make sense to us. Give us a sense of purpose, as the title suggests, for how we can live more healthily, because that's the way you designed us to be. Amen. Andre, over to you.
Thank you very much, Clive. Good evening, everyone. Again, as Clive said, it's Andre Crawford again, but from producer to presenter. So this is my week to present on the topic of health. I just want to say hello and welcome again. Thank you for giving us 1.5 hours of your time. And like I said in the first week, that if you gave us 1.5 hours of your time each evening, then we would change your lives. And the first week, you all said that your lives were changed through the information that was given. The second week, your lives were changed because we learned how to cook plant-based food. Last week, Jackie took us through God's plan, and this week I'm quite excited actually, because we're going in a slightly different direction, but we're still focusing on the element of health. But this time, we're going to go a little bit more into the Bible. Because many people think and many people believe that the Bible is just a religious book. But what I found is that the Bible is the best book that we have with regards to our health. So as we go through this week, you're going to begin to see that there are principles in the scriptures that will make so much sense to us. They're going to make so much sense to us because we will have heard them before, but probably not in the context that we're going to hear them this week. So, all the previous 3 weeks, in fact, let me share my screen. The previous 3, here we go. Purposed health and the man called Daniel. Health and the man called Daniel. So throughout the last 3 weeks and into this week, we have been trying to show you by practical example and by information that you can live healthy without being wealthy. You can live healthily without being wealthy. Now, many people say, well, to eat healthily and to buy healthy food is quite expensive. But I want to say that if you think that living healthy is expensive, try being sick. Because sickness is far more detrimental on the pocket than buying healthy food. Yes, it might be a little bit more pricey than the chicken and the chips, or the fish and the chips, or the pie and the chips, or whatever it is that is being bought. But long term, it's going to be easier on the pocket because the body is going to be kept in optimal health. Now, I hope you've got a pen and paper there. You will get the slides. I'll give you the slides at the end of the week when all the presentations are finished, so don't worry about that. But I hope you do have a pen and paper to hand so that you can take some of these notes, because sometimes presenters say things that are not on the slides. So I want to share with you some principles from the Bible. And the first principle comes from Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 3. It says, "A prudent man foresees the evil and hides himself." So a wise man, a prudent man, an astute man will see danger coming and take evasive action before that danger comes to him. But then it says, but the simple man, the unwise man, passes on and is punished. And that just makes sense on so many different levels. If I'm in the middle of the road and I'm seeing an Arctic lorry coming in my direction, and I can see it coming from afar off, and I just stand in the middle of the road, not taking any evasive action, then that lorry is going to come and it's going to mow me down. But when I see it and I take evasive action, then I'm able to avert the danger that is heading my way. But if I'll be foolish to see that Arctic lorry coming and just stand in the way of it, because it will mow me down and that will be the end of me. So with regards to health, what we've been learning over the last 3 weeks is that there are certain principles that we need to understand and that we need to take knowledge of, because when we understand the principle, we understand that if I do this, then this is going to happen. If I don't treat my body well, then sickness and disease is going to be the result. So again, principle number 1 for this evening: the prudent man foresees the evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. One of the other things that we've been trying to show you is that the healthy communities is about education. It's about education and not medication. Now, that is not to say that medication, allopathic medicine, which is drug medication, doesn't have its place. Medication is necessary to save life. If I've got a huge gash on my leg and my blood is pumping out of my body, as good as cayenne pepper is at coagulating the blood, it's not going to suffice to close up the wound that I have. You're going to need to give me something to stop the bleeding. You're going to have to give me surgery to save my life. And that's indeed what allopathic medicine should do. It should be in emergency situations, severe situations, to save life. But medication should not be a way of life. Let me say that again. Allopathic medicine is necessary to save life in severe situations. But allopathic medicine shouldn't be a way of life. The body has been created, and as you're going to see throughout the week, the body has been created by a master designer. And the Bible is our owner's manual. So if you've ever bought a new product, maybe not an iPhone, but a new car, a new electrical product, when you open the box, you have the product, but you also have the owner's manual. And the owner's manual tells you about the product, it tells you about the manufacturer, it tells you about how to keep that product in best working order. It also tells you that what you should do, what troubleshooting methods you should use if the product gets faulty. And the Bible is humanity's owner's manual. It tells you about the product. The Bible tells you about the manufacturer. The Bible tells you about how to keep the product in good working order and what you should do should the product begin to break down. So you've heard this old adage: an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Benjamin Franklin. It is far better to know how to prevent the disease than to know how to treat it once it's been contracted. That doesn't make sense. If you can avoid something that's detrimental, it's better you avoid it than trying to deal with it once it's been contracted. So let's move on. Principle number 2 comes from Luke, the book of Luke, chapter 16 and verse 10. Luke 16 and verse 10. Here's the principle. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. You may have read that text before. You may have had an understanding of it. But the way that we're going to use it this week is in regards to health. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. Like I said a few moments ago, the Bible is not just a religious book. It gives practical, sound advice regarding how to live, how to enjoy, and how to preserve life. And I'm not just talking about the principles in the Bible. It's not just the principle of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Yes, that's a good principle, but there are some other principles that, as I've said, teach us how to live, enjoy, and preserve life. Now, the text says, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. Now, the least component of our body that make up our body is what we call the cell or cells. You have blood cells, you have hair cells, you have cells that make up fingernails, you have all different types of cell. And the cell is the smallest organism in the body. It's the building block of human life. It's the foundation upon which the rest of the body is built. So remember the principle. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. Now, before I move on, here in England, there is a saying, take care of the pennies and the pennies will take care of themselves, or the pennies will take care of the pounds. Meaning that if you're careful with saving pennies, then the pounds will ultimately rack up. And this is the principle that we're going to use with regards to our body. Cells are the smallest organs in the body. It's the building block of human life. It's the foundation, or they are the foundation upon which the rest of the body is built. Now, when cells are joined together in community, cells make tissue, muscles, body tissue, fibers. Now, when fibers are joined together in community, they make up organs. So you've got heart, you've got lungs, liver, pancreas, spleen, small intestine, large intestines, esophagus, all of these different organs. So remember, smallest organism, the foundation, the building block is the cell. The cell joined together in community, tissue. Tissues joined together in community, organs. Now, when certain organs join together in community, they create systems. And there are a range of systems in the body that make up the body. You have, or we have, when systems are joined together in community, you have the skeletal system. You have the endocrine system. You have the lymphatic system, the nervous system, the endocrine. I've put the endocrine already. The endocrine system, the nervous system, the reproductive system. You have all of these different systems that make up our bodies. But remember, we started off not at the body level, but at the cell level. And what we're going to learn this week, and what you have been learning, is that if you take care of the cell, then the tissue will be healthy, the organs will be healthy, the systems will be healthy, the whole body will be healthy. So here's our principle again. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. So if we're faithful in keeping the cells healthy, then the tissue in turn will be healthy, the organs will be healthy, the systems will be healthy, our whole body will be healthy. And we're gonna talk about how do we keep the cells healthy before we get into our case study. Now, if that makes sense, I can see the chat. If that makes sense to you, just put in the chat, that makes sense. If you understand that the cell is the building block of the body, and if we keep the cell healthy, then the tissue will be healthy, the organs will be healthy, the systems will be healthy, the whole body will be healthy. If that makes sense, just put that makes sense. So, our next principle. We said that the cell is the foundation upon which the rest of the body is built. Now, principle number 2 says, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Now, this is why at the beginning of the week, and at the beginning of the seminar 3 weeks ago, I said that the Healthy Communities team are seeking to change lives, one life, or change communities, one life at a time. And it's because the principle that we have in mind is the principle that we've just learned. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. If we can change one person at a time, then we can change one household at a time. And if we can change one household at a time, then we can change one community at a time. And if we can change one community and we can continue to change communities, then our cities, our towns, our world might be a different place. So here's principle number 2. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? So there are 5 needs of the cell. Remember, we're looking to deal with disease from a cellular level. You heard Jackie say, and you heard Dr. Nash and Brother James, you heard them say that if you only ever treat the symptoms of disease, you're not actually getting to the root. The symptoms will always exist as long as you're not dealing with the root. And the root of disease isn't the symptom, it's the cell. So there are 5 needs of the cell that we're going to need to understand, because if we understand them and then we systematically begin to address these needs, guaranteed the rest of the body will be healthy. So the first need of the cell is oxygen. Without oxygen, cells die in minutes. And just think about it. If a complete body is deprived of oxygen for any length of time of minutes, that body will die. Why? Because the cell is deprived of oxygen. So without oxygen, cells die in minutes. The next need of the cell is water. Think about it. You can survive a lot longer without water than you can without oxygen. And it's true of the cellular level. The cell can survive a lot longer without water than it can without oxygen. But the second need of the cell is water. And as you'll see, water is necessary for every bodily function. The next need of the cell, after oxygen, after water, is nutrients. You can survive a lot longer without food than you can without water, than you can without oxygen. So oxygen, water, nutrients, 3 needs of the cell. The next need of the cell is waste elimination. The cell needs to be able to get rid of the waste that happens through its processes. So oxygen, water, nutrients, waste elimination. And then the 5th need of the cell is freedom from poisons. Freedom from poisons. So 5 needs of the cell: oxygen, and they're in order: oxygen, water, nutrients, waste elimination, or the ability to get rid of its waste, and freedom from poisons. Now, again, just think about it. On a complete body level, we need oxygen, the most important. We need water. We need nutrients. We need to be able to get rid of our waste, because if we don't get rid of our waste, it just poisons the system. And if the system is poisoned, then health is gone. We end up with disease. Now, here's principle number 3. And I hope that you're beginning to see that the Bible is far deeper with regards to health than many people actually give it credit for. So here's principle number 3. Comes from Leviticus chapter 17 and verse 11. It says, the life of the flesh is in the blood. The life of the flesh, the life of the body, the life of the cell is in the blood. If you can keep your cells healthy with oxygen, water, nutrients, waste elimination, freedom from poisons, then you're going to have good blood. And blood is the life current that takes everything around the body. If the blood is diseased, then everywhere the blood goes is also diseased. Now, there are certain things that cause the blood to be diseased, and we're going to go through that today. We're going to go through that on Wednesday. On Wednesday, let me give you a little snack. On Wednesday, we're going to go through a presentation called the Egyptian Connection. The Egyptian Connection. And when we go through the Egyptian Connection, you're going to see straight from the Bible that the diseases that modern man suffers with, the Egyptians were suffering with. You're going to see powerfully that the diseases that the Egyptians were suffering with, are the same diseases that modern man is suffering with. So that's as much as I'm going to give you. You need to come back on, what's the date? Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not quite sure in which order I'm going to do it yet. But Tuesday or Wednesday, you need to come back for the Egyptian connection. So now with all of that in place, that cells make tissues, tissues make organs, organs make systems, systems make the whole body, that there are 5 needs of the cell: oxygen, water, nutrients, waste elimination, freedom from poisons. With all of that information now, and with all of the principles, that he that is faithful in that which is least is also faithful in much. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? That the life of the flesh is in the blood. With all of that information, now we're ready to look at our case study. And this case study is of a 15-year-old boy. At the beginning of the case study, he's around 15 years old. And what you're going to see, or what we're going to see as we go through the case study, is that he, like us, faced a situation that required him to make a decision. So the case study is also from the Bible, and it's from the book of Daniel. So this is the name of the person that we're going to look at. Now, we're not going to read every single verse. We're going to look at a few certain verses to begin to understand how this case study actually applies to our day. So let me give you a little bit of the backstory. So Daniel is originally, he is a Hebrew. No, not originally. He is a Hebrew. And he's originally from Jerusalem. But the king of Babylon, whose name was Nebuchadnezzar, he went to Jerusalem and took captives. And he brought them from Jerusalem and brought them into his government, his city, his economy. And that economy and that city and that government was called the government of Babylon. And he doesn't just take any and anybody. He takes the cream of the crop. He takes young men who are of the kingly lineage, because what he wants to do is he wants to perpetuate his kingdom, and he wants the best minds in his kingdom. So Daniel and many other of the king's stock are taken from their homeland into another country, into another system, into another economy, and they are the king's idea is that he's going to put them through his schooling so that at the end of their schooling they can serve him. So excuse me, let me take some water. In part 3, verse 3 of this case study, it says, "And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes." So there we can see that King Nebuchadnezzar, the head of state of this country, has taken the best of the young men of Jerusalem. For what reason? Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in wisdom, and cunning in knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. So this is what's happened. Nebuchadnezzar, the head of state, has taken these young men because he wants to put them to work in his government. And already the young men that he's taken are already skillful in wisdom. They're cunning in knowledge. They understand science. They have massive intellects. But the king, his idea is that he wants them to forget where they're coming from and take on his ideologies, wants them to take on his way of life. So it says, "And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years. that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. So this is what's happened, is the king has said, you know what, I'm going to put these guys through schooling. They're going to go into the education system, into the university system of Babylon. And what I'm going to do is, while they're there, I'm going to give them what I eat and what I drink, because if it's good for me, it's good for them. And then we move on and we find the first time is referenced 4 Hebrew young men. These aren't the only 4 that are there, but these are the only 4 that are named, and you'll see why shortly. It says, now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Those are the 4 Hebrew names of the principal characters in this chapter. Now, before we move on, I want to bring out a point for you, because it's really important that you understand what's taking place in this case study. Now, in the Bible, the Israelites, when they named their children, their names were representative of characteristics of God that they wanted their children to embrace. So Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, their names actually mean something. Now, you'll see at the end of their names a suffix, either el or ah. And that is because in the Hebrew mind and the Hebrew parent, they wanted their children to have their names to be representative of some character or some characteristic or some attribute of the God that they believed in, the God of heaven. So the name of God in the Bible, in the Old Testament, you'll find as either Elohim or Yahweh or Jehovah. So Elohim, you'll find names that end with El are to do with the name of God, that is Elohim. Names that end with Ah are to do with Jehovah. Okay? So knowing that now, let's see what their names mean, and and you'll see why I've brought this out. Because when Nebuchadnezzar tries to get them to forget where they're coming from, the first thing that he does is change their name. Because when you change something's name, you begin to change its ideology, its identity. So Daniel is God is my judge. Daniel, God is my judge. Hananiah, God has favored. You can see the suffix at the end, ah, for Jehovah. Hananiah, God has favored. Mishael, who is what God is. It's a bit strange how it's written, how it's the understanding of it, but that's what it means. Mishael means who is what God is. And Azariah, Jehovah has helped. So in this case study, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah have been taken from their native land and taken to a new economy, and the head of state and the head of the government, in order to try and get them to forget where they're coming from, the first thing that he does, the Bible says, it says, unto whom the prince of eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. Now you probably recognize them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but that's not their real names. That was the names that they received when they were slaves. Their real names were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Now, what does the name, or what do these new names mean? We've already seen God is my judge. Who is what God is? God is my helper. You've seen the names. What do these new names that the Babylonian eunuch gave to these young men, what do they mean? Belteshazzar, Lord of the treasure. Now, as you read through the rest of the case study of Daniel, you'll see that Babylon was known for its gold. It was known for its treasures. So when the master of the eunuch gives Daniel the name Belteshazzar, it's in reference to Babylon, to the Babylon treasure. Shadrach, what does that mean? The great scribe. Meshach, guest of the king. Abednego, servant of the god Nebo. So you can already begin to see that when they're taken from their own land, their own country, their names are changed so that they begin to lose their identity. But what you'll find in fact, what you won't find in the case study is any remonstrance. You won't find anywhere in this narrative where they argue with the king about their names being changed. You won't find it anywhere. What you will find, however, is the moment that the king decides to give them something different to put into their body. When he decides that, you know what, I'm going to give them of my meat and my drink, that's when a situation arises. The Bible says, the narrative says, the case study says, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now I want you to see what's happening. I want you to see what's taking place. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah didn't kick up a fuss when their names were changed, because they understood, you can call me what you want, I still know who I am. Call me Belteshazzar if you want, call me Shadrach if you want. My real name is Daniel and Hananiah. But the moment the head of state begins to change their diet, when the head of state begins to change what they're going to put into their body, that's when Daniel and his friend said, you know what? You've gone a little bit too far. And the Bible says that Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. Now that's a really interesting word, purpose. And that's where the title of this whole week comes from. What is purpose? Purpose is a noun, a person's sense of resolve or determination. Synonyms: determination, resoluteness, resolution, firmness of purpose, steadfastness. So Daniel had already purposed in his mind that, listen, no matter what they tell me, Hananiah said, no matter what happens, whatever they give us to eat, we're not going to do it. We're not going to put into our bodies what we know is going to be detrimental to our bodies. We're not going to drink anything that's going to be harmful. We're not going to eat anything that's going to be harmful. We're not even going to give the semblance that we're going to eat, and we'll just probably eat the lettuce that's around or the apples that's... No. We're not going to do it at all. Now, over the last 3 weeks, we've traveled a long journey from COVID-19 and the power of lifestyle. We've journeyed Kathleen's plant-based cooking. We've journeyed through God's plan in a global pandemic. Now, this has been good information, but I understand that in order to keep going in the right direction, we're going to need resolve. We're going to need determination. We're going to need resoluteness. We're going to need firmness of purpose. We're going to need steadfastness. Because if you've ever tried to give up something before and you are not steadfast, it's only a matter of time before the thing that you've tried to give up creeps back into the life or comes running back in. We are going to need to be like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah as we continue on this journey. Now, this journey isn't so much a diet plan. In fact, it's not even so much. It's not a diet plan. What we've gone through over the previous 3 weeks has not been a new plan for a diet. What it has been is an effort to show you how to make lifestyle changes. Lifestyle changes that will last a lifetime. And now that we've had this information, now we're going to have to begin to exercise resoluteness, resolve, determination, firmness of purpose, and steadfastness. So let's go back to the narrative. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now, another thing to realize when you're reading the English Bible is that the Bible wasn't written in English. It was written in predominantly three languages: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Now, when I had a look at what this word meat meant, it's not talking only about flesh foods. It's not talking only about fish and chicken and pork and lamb and all of those different things. The word meat takes in a whole range of other food items. So I've put some of them on the screen. So Daniel had purposed that he wasn't going to defile himself with any of the king's flesh, with any of the king's dainties, with any of the king's delicacies. Why? Because he knew it was going to probably contain high fats, high sugars, dairy, and it was going to lack in nutrition. And as we've seen over the previous weeks, foods that are high in saturated fats, those are the culprits that begin to clog up the arteries. And if you get an artery that's clogged in the heart, you end up with a heart attack. If you get an artery that's clogged in the brain, you end up with stroke. If you get an artery that's clogged in the legs or the arm, you end up with blood clots, which can be fatal if that blood clot travels. So Daniel had purposed in his heart that he wasn't going to defile himself with the king's high fats, high sugars, the dairy, or anything that was going to lack nutrition. The other thing that Daniel wasn't going to defile himself with was the wine which the king served. Now, the king was a pagan. He was a Babylonian. He was an idolater. He served wine. He ate all kinds of things. His food was dedicated to idols. It was just not the best diet. And Daniel, being a Hebrew, would have remembered, his parents would have told him, listen, God has said that this is what we need to put in our bodies. He would have heard the oral history about the diet that God gave to humanity. Fruits, nuts, grains. He would have heard about all of that. So when he's come to this new land and they've changed his name, not a big issue, but when you try and change my diet, I understand, or Daniel understood, Hananiah understood, Mishael and Azariah understood that this is a problem, because the food that the king wants to give me is going to create disease in my body. It's going to put a situation in my body where my body is going to have foreign entities in it, and it's going to fight back. Now, which laws of health do you suppose the king's diet violated? Nutrition, water, most of the things that we would have learned last week. Most of the things that we would have learned last week, the king's diet would have violated. And what is nature's response to the laws of health being violated? Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. So Daniel says, do you know what? This is going to be a problem. This is going to be a huge problem. So what does he do? What does Daniel do when he's faced with a situation where the head of state, the head of the government has said, you need to do what everybody else is doing. You need to put into your body what I'm telling you that you need to put in. Now, we didn't read the text, or maybe we did and I just glossed over it, but the word of the king wasn't just a suggestion. See, in those days, the king's word was law. The king's word, there's another principle in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 8 and verse 4, I think it is. And it says, where the word of the king is, there is power. no one can say to the king, what doest thou? When you are a monarch, when you are the head of a government, when you are the head of a state, what you say is law. So when Daniel is faced with this situation about putting the king's meat and the king's wine into his body, when Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah all look at each other and say, boys, this is an issue. When they made resolute decision not to put into their bodies those things, they weren't just saying, you know what, king, thanks for the advice, but no thanks. What they were actually doing was going against the word of the king, the law of the land. But there are some principles that we're going to bring out later on how to deal with a situation like Daniel's. But we'll do that at the end of this presentation. So what does Daniel do? Daniel says, prove thy servant. In fact, the narrative says that when Daniel was told, and Hananiah, Mishael was told, this is what the king has ordered that you eat to nourish you. And remember, the king wanted to nourish them, in his mind, for 3 years. 3 years they were going to be in schooling. 3 years they would have eaten from the king's table and drunk his wine. So if they hadn't had resoluteness, if they hadn't had firmness of purpose, for 3 years they would have been drinking alcohol. For 3 years they would have been eating high fats, high sugars, high cholesterol forming foods. They would have been eating those things that they knew their body would ultimately reject. So what Daniel does, and what they do actually, is they speak to Melzar, which is the king's worker, and they say, look, we understand that the king has decreed and ordered that we eat this. However, prove thy servants, I beseech thee. Listen to his language. He doesn't flat out reject. He doesn't flat out saying, listen, this is my divine right to eat what I want. He says, look, I beseech you, prove thy servants 10 days and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Now take notice of the diet that Daniel is asking to have in place of the high sugar, the high cholesterol, the high salt, and the high cholesterol forming foods. Look at the diet that he's decided, you know what, I think if you allow us to eat this, you're going to see something different. And later on in the case study, that's what happens. He says, look, prove us 10 days, and then after 10 days, come look at us. And when you look at us, depending on what you see, then you make a decision. So Daniel asks for pulse to eat and water to drink. Now, this was a really, really massive thing for Daniel to ask, because, and in fact, the worker that was working for the government realized that what Daniel was asking was going to endanger his life, because he says, he responds by saying, look, Daniel, I like you guys, but the orders from my government, the orders from my king are that you have to eat this. And if you don't eat this, and the king comes in to look at you at the end of these 3 years, and you look worse than everyone else, not only am I going to lose my job, but I'm going to lose my head. I'm going to lose my life. So when Daniel is asking the government official to say, look, just give me pulse to eat and water to drink, he has to put trust in his God that, listen, not only are you going to keep me healthy, but you're going to keep this man alive. I hope you're seeing that this is a massive issue. It's not just about food, or it's not just about meat or no meat. It's not just about wine versus water. It's about keeping somebody else's life alive. And it's about showing that you have ultimate trust in God. So Daniel asked for pulse to eat. What was Daniel asking for? Now, when Kathleen did her healthy cooking classes, in fact, in the chat, if you're still with me, if it's still making sense, then I want you to put it still makes sense. I see what this narrative is trying to bring out. Please just put in the chat, it still makes sense. So Daniel is asking, instead of the king's meat and the dainties and the delicacies and the wine, he's asking for, give me pulses and water. What were the pulses? What do pulses entail? Peas, lentils, beans. And now here's the thing. Kathleen taught us how to cook peas and lentils and beans. You don't just have to put them in a pot and then wait for them to stew down and eat them. You can do all kinds of things with them. You can make burgers. You can make all different types of delicious food from peas and lentils and beans. So Daniel is asking, listen, I don't want animal protein. Give me plant protein. Because Daniel, maybe he knew, maybe he didn't, but we know that plant protein is much easier to digest than meat protein. Maybe Daniel knew, maybe he didn't, but we know that one of the byproducts of the body breaking down flesh food is purine. And purine, when you take the P off, you're left with urine, which is uric acid. And we were told just a few weeks ago that when uric acid builds up in the system and has nowhere else to go, it collects in the joints, in the finger joints, in the knee joints, in the foot joints. And then we have a name for those kind of diseases, and it's called gout. Or we have a name, or we have a range of diseases with the itis at the end. Colitis, appendicitis, all of the different itises, and they're all talking about the same thing. What they're telling you, what they're telling us, is that there is inflammation in the system. And that inflammation could have come by various different avenues. It's not necessarily just by meat, by flesh foods, stress, unhealthy drinks, dainties that Daniel rejected. All of these different food elements that we now know are detrimental to the body can cause this nature to begin to fight against the disease and fight against the violation and cause disease in our bodies. So what is a pulse? Chickpeas or garbanzo beans, kabuli or desi, lentils, green lentils, red lentils, small brown lentils, French green, black lentils. I think Kathleen cooked, if I remember rightly, she cooked, what was the black one, the small black one called? The name escapes me. But you've got dried peas, split green peas, split yellow peas. You've got whole green peas, yellow peas, all different types of nuts, pulses and legumes that create delicious, nutritious, tasting food. This is what Daniel, bulgur lentils. Thank you very much, Kathleen. Thank you very much. Bulgur lentils. All of these different options. Now, is this what they gave Daniel? I'm not so sure. But what we do know is that he asked for pulses and he got pulses. And then you've got your beans, adzuki beans or black-eyed peas, black beans, black-eyed peas, cowpeas, sorry, I think is the other name for adzuki beans, kidney beans, Great Northern navy beans, pinto beans, fava beans, mung beans, lima beans, all different types of bean that have the protein that Daniel would have had from the meat source, but he decides, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get it from a plant-based source. Love pulses. Pulses help to maintain healthy weight. Pulses are high in protein, virtually fat-free, and have low glycemic index. So if you're a diabetic, you need to eat foods that are low in glycemic index. Why? Because the blood sugar is going to be stable. You're not going to get highs. You're not going to get deep lows. You're going to have regulated blood sugar levels. Pulses are affordable. Now, if you live in England and you live in Manchester, where I'm living, there are many Asian food stores that have a range of pulses and beans and all the different kinds of legumes. your split peas, your what's the one, chana dal, all of these different beautiful, God-given, nutritious, power-packed nutrient foods that will nourish the body without causing harm to the body. See, that's the definition of food. Food is that which will nourish the body without damaging it. So there are some foods that you eat, that will give a little bit of nourishment to the body, but will also end up harming the body. We're not going to talk about that right now, but we've learned over the past 3 weeks that there are plenty of nutritious, wholesome, healthful foods that will bring health to the system, health to the body. What else did Daniel ask for? Daniel asked for water. He asked for pure, and like you heard last week, anything that is put in water makes the water not water anymore. It becomes food, essentially. Why? Because when you drink that water that has something in it, the body has to separate whatever you've put in it from the water before it can use the water. So if it's lemon, it's going to separate the lemon and the vitamin C and all of that before it can use the water. Lemon is good for helping clear the kidneys and detoxify the kidneys. Water keeps the blood thin and mobile. Water keeps the blood thin and mobile. And we need the blood thin and mobile because if at all you have reduced artery size and you've got plaque inside of those arteries, then thick, immobile blood is a massive problem. So when we drink water, we keep the blood thin and mobile. And like I said earlier, any blood that is diseased, anywhere that blood goes creates diseased body parts. So if we are eating diseased food, then that diseased food becomes disease, gets broken down and creates diseased blood. And then when that diseased blood, when it goes to the brain, starts to damage the brain, starts to damage the kidneys, starts to damage the blood vessels, starts to damage the small blood vessels in the eyes. And people end up with diabetes and atherosclerosis, that's the hardening of the arteries, the furring of the arteries, ends up with all manner of diseases. But the water, if you change your diet and have plant-based protein, plant-based calcium as opposed to dairy calcium, and you have all of these different nutrients from the plant and you're drinking the water, then your blood is healthy and your blood is mobile. And you know, I'm just amazed at the manufacturer of the human body, because all the elements that you find in the human body, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, iron, all of these different things you will find in the soil. Now, that's not the amazing thing, because the Bible actually tells us in Genesis chapter 1 that Genesis chapter 2, and God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. We're told that we come from the dust. So it stands to reason that the elements that we find in our bodies, the magnesium, the phosphorus, the iron, the zinc, would be found in the ground. But here is the beauty. God knew that humanity couldn't just pick up dirt and eat dirt to get those nutrients. Couldn't do it. So what does he do? In Genesis chapter 1, the Bible says that what he does is he causes the ground to produce herbs, to produce trees, to produce all these different creations that will, number one, if they have roots and shoots, will suck up the nutrients out of the ground, and at the end of the limb will produce a fruit, will produce an apple, will produce an orange, will produce a pineapple, will produce aloe vera or something like that. And then when we eat those foods and internal and digest those foods, guess what happens? We then begin to take on the phosphorus, the magnesium, the calcium, all those, the zinc, all of those different foods that we find in the soil. And it's delicious. So God had in mind the preservation of human life. And he made the tree and the herb yielding seed and the seed and the fruit that with seed within itself. So for the benefit of man, it's the fuel that God gave to humanity so that humanity would live continually. Now, in Genesis chapter 3, there is something that breaks that chain and that causes death and disease to come into our world. But the ideal, the optimum goal for God was that man should eat from the plants. In fact, when you look at it, man and plants have a symbiotic relationship. Our waste through the processes of our body is carbon dioxide. We take in oxygen and we give off carbon dioxide. The plants do it in reverse. They take in carbon dioxide and they give off oxygen. So man and the plant world have a symbiotic relationship. Now, some people will say, well, I can get calcium and I can get iron from flesh foods, and you can, but you're getting it secondhand because those animals have eaten grass. Those animals have eaten plants. That's where they get it from. So why are you going to get it secondhand? You might as well just go straight to the source. So Daniel asked for pulses. He asked for water. So you can see here the breakdown of how much water is needed for all body parts. Now, I think Jackie said it, or maybe it was James or Natalie, that when you're dehydrated, the first thing to be affected is the brain. Headaches, fogginess, all of these different things begin to take place because you're dehydrated. So the body needs to be kept well hydrated. I wonder if you've been drinking a lot more water since these seminars started. Have you been drinking a lot more water? Because as I said before, every bodily function water is necessary. Digestion, waste elimination, the mobility of the blood. So Daniel, in this case study, has asked for pulses and he's asked for water, as opposed to the king's meat and the king's wine. Daniel says, what I want you to do, Malzar, is come back in 10 days and come check us. Now, Malzar probably would have thought, you know what? I can do 10 days because you guys are under my care for 3 years. So 10 days out of 3 years is not going to make that much of a difference. If you look worse for wear of having eaten the plant-based diet, then we can rectify that after 10 days. So the 10 days, Daniel's eating the plant-based food, he's drinking his water, he's doing his exercise, he's probably praying because he realizes that God is being put to the test. The diet that God has given is being put to the test. So he's probably praying and asking God that he will be seen through the diet that Daniel is promoting. And then the narrative continues. At the end of 10 days, their countenances, that's how they looked, appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children that did eat the portion of the king's meat. Now, this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing because, as we saw at the beginning of the case study, Daniel wasn't the only Hebrew, the only Jew that went into this new system. But Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were the only ones that decided, you know what? We're going to stay true to principle. We're going to stay true to purpose. And after 10 days, just 10 days of eating legumes and pulses and water, Malzar comes back, and the narrative says, the case study says, their faces and their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh after just 10 days than all the other children that had eaten the king's meat. Now, that's amazing. If God can do that for someone who's determined to change their lifestyle, if he can do that for someone in 10 days, what can he do in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in a month, in 3 months, in a quarter of the year, in half a year? What about 3/4? What about a year? What would happen if a person said, you know what? I'm learning things that are going to be beneficial for my body, not just now, but in the long run. But God, I need help. I need help to change the habits that I've picked up over the years. But I understand that the diet that you've given to me is the best diet. What would God do for you in 10 days, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, a year? See, what you're going to see as we go through the rest of the narrative and the rest of the case study is that the best diet for a clear mind is a plant-based diet, unequivocally. And you're not only going to see it from Daniel. You're going to see. I've got some slides of celebrities who are at the top of their game, who also advocate a plant-based diet. So this is not just healthy communities trying to push on our communities a plant-based diet because that's what we do. No. We're looking at the owner's manual, which is the Bible, and we're seeing that, hold on a second, the manufacturer said that in order to keep this living machinery in optimum working order, then this is the fuel. I've got a diesel car outside, and in the logbook, it says to me, when you go to the petrol station, or the gas station for the Americans that are with us, when you go to the petrol station, you need to put in diesel fuel. Don't put in petrol, put in diesel. Now, I could say, as the car owner, I bought the car from you. I'm going to put in it whatever I want. It's my car. I own it. I could do that. That's my freedom of choice. What I am free to do is make any decision I want. What I'm not free to choose is the results of those decisions. So if I go to the petrol station, the gas station, and I put petrol in my diesel tank, my diesel vehicle is not going to get very far. It might get off out of the petrol station. It might go down the road. It might even get me close to home. But the moment that the diesel system senses that it's not diesel in the system, it's actually petrol, then the car's going to say, no more. I can't go any further. And it's going to stop. And so it is with this living machinery that we call our bodies. The master has a plan for the product that he has created. And he says, look, the best fuel for you is what I suggest. It's plants, it's nuts, it's grains, it's vegetables. That's the best fuel to keep you in optimal health. Now, like I said, we are free to choose whatever decision we want to choose. What we're not free to choose is the results of those decisions. So, it says, as for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. They already came to Babylon with that. But now the knowledge that they had was increased. Because they honored God, he honored them. Now I want you to notice this. It says, and the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So, in fact, let me keep going. Therefore stood they before the king, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in his realm. Now look what's happened. Not only is Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah wiser than their peers that have come to Babylon, But Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are also wiser than the Babylonians that were already there. And notice who's doing the inquiry. It's the head of state. It's the statesman. It's the king. They're the ones that are standing before him, giving answers to his questions with regards to, I don't know, it could be about Babylonian history, Babylonian maths, Babylonian geometry, or whatever it was. They're standing before the king. And I can imagine that when Malzar brings them in, he's got his chest puffed out, because he can see that Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah look so much better than everyone else. And maybe the king asked, wow, hold on a second. I'm feeding everyone out. I'm feeding everyone the same. I'm feeding everyone the same diet. How come these four guys look so much different to everyone else? And maybe they asked them. Maybe the king asked Daniel and his friends, what have you been eating? How come you look 10 times better than everyone else? How come you can answer the questions that no one else can answer, and they're eating my food as well? And maybe Daniel says, do you know what, king? We didn't actually eat your food. Thank you for giving it to us. Thank you for offering it to us. However, because we're plant-based eaters, and we understand that meat, when it breaks down, creates this in the body, and when the sugars are high in the body, this is the situation. We actually didn't eat that, king. What we did, let me show you. We made some chickpea burgers. We had water instead of the wine, king. And at that point, the king is like, there's something different about these guys. All because they had purpose in how they were going to conduct themselves with regards to their diet. Now, I said to you just a few moments ago that I have some celebrities who have embraced I'm not going to say veganism, because I don't know I'm not going to say plant-based diet, because I don't know if they're plant-based per se, but they call themselves vegans. And the difference between vegans and plant-based plant-based diet is that vegans will not wear anything to do with animals. They won't eat anything. They won't have honey. They won't wear leather shoes. They won't wear a leather belt. But plant-based eaters, it's regards to their food. So I have leather belt. I have leather shoes. I'm not a vegan per se, but I'm a plant-based health reformer. And that's the difference. So we have Lewis Hamilton, professional F1 driver. He is fueled, pardon the pun, on plants. Now, if you know anything about F1 driving, you lose a lot of weight in a race because of the tremendous G's that they're under, the tremendous heat that's around them, their concentration. So they can easily lose, they said, quite a few pounds, even maybe a stone or two in one race, 50-yard, 60-yard laps. And Lewis Hamilton realizes the power and the potency of plant-based food. Professional F1 driver. Then there is this lady, Serena Williams. Professional tennis player at the top, and has been at the top of her game since I've been young. Since I first recognized them, their first Wimbledon with those beads in their hair that kept dropping out. Fueled on plants. Top of their professional sport, where she's running around, hitting forehands, hitting backhands for an hour and a half, 2 hours, fueled on plants. And then we have Sergio Aguero, again at the top of his chosen sport, professional footballer, fueled on plants. But it's not only sports people. For those that are in America, you recognize this guy. Some people may recognize him. Cory Booker, US Senator, fueled on plants. So this idea of a plant-based diet, this idea of plant-based eating for better health, better mental capacity, is not just found in the owner's manual in the Bible. People who may not understand about the Bible as we understand it, may not understand about the case studies and the narratives of the Bible, they're understanding by experience that the way to go is via plants rather than flesh. It's to get calcium from your spinach, from your dark greens, as opposed to cow's milk. The way to get your protein is not from the chicken egg or the quail egg, because if you can get protein from them, they understand, but you're also going to get 250 milligrams of cholesterol. So they'll say, okay, instead of going that route, let's go for the kale, let's go for the spinach, let's go for the spring greens. And they're beginning to understand, hold on a second, I'm getting the protein, but I'm also getting other benefits. And then we have the former US President Bill Clinton. And his story is amazing. After the meeting, go onto Google or YouTube and read about his story. He wasn't always a plant-based eater. But when he got sick, he realized, you know what, I want to be around for my grandchildren. And he systematically began to deal with changing his diet from what it was to plant-based. And he says, in his own words, you can listen to him talk, he says he's never felt better. So you have the case study of Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. You've got the testimony of Lewis Hamilton, Serena Williams, Sergio Aguero, Cory Booker, and Bill Clinton. That a plant-based diet. You've got the testimony of the king of the government telling us that, look, when he examined the people that were in his government, in his cabinet, they looked fairer and fatter in flesh, and that their mental power and their brain power was immense. That's what the testimony of a pagan king says. That's what the testimony of a former US president says. That's what the testimony of professional sports people say. So, 2 more slides. What I should have done actually is I should have put up the challenge. Let me just talk to you about the challenge that I'm going to challenge you beginning today. Let's begin tomorrow. What I'll do is I'll put it up tomorrow so you can see it, and then I'll email it out to you. The Healthy Habits Challenge. It's first going to begin with determining or making a determination that what you want to put in your body is going to be the healthiest. That the choices that you make from tomorrow onwards are going to be better choices than you've probably made last week, the week before, however long. So here's the challenge. It's a 7-day challenge. So it should have started today, but it doesn't matter. We can start from tomorrow and we can finish next Sunday. So here's the challenge. If you got pen and paper, you can write it down. Or actually, Clive, if you do this for me, if you could type it in the chat as I'm talking about it. So your challenge tomorrow is making baby steps. We're not going to change everything all at once. We're going to take baby steps. Your challenge for tomorrow is, if you're accustomed to eating flesh, meat, I want you to tomorrow, I know it's a bit soon, but you can do it, to have a meatless Monday. So replace the meat protein with a plant protein. So that could be beans. It could be tofu, if you know what to do with tofu. Maybe beans is easier if you don't know what you're doing with tofu. In fact, there's recipes that we sent out. Maybe you check your email and look at the recipes, see if there's anything you could do with that. So Monday's meatless Monday, tomorrow. Tuesday is Temperance Tuesday. So if you're accustomed to eating maybe or snacking, let's say you're accustomed to snacking, see if you can, by determination, take out the snacks. If you don't snack and you're used to eating maybe 4 times a day, 5 times a day, little meals often, see if you can reduce them. That's just one challenge on Tuesday. Wednesday, Walking Wednesday. Walking Wednesday. So you've got Meatless Monday, you've got Temperance Tuesday, you've got Walking Wednesday. Make a conscious effort to go for a half an hour walk either in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening, whatever suits you. See if you can go to a park, or if you're privileged, go walk on the beach near the sea. That's Wednesday, half an hour. Thursday is Thirsty Thursday. So maybe you're not accustomed to drinking much water. Maybe you drink fruit juices or pops or alcohol or whatever it is. See if on Thursday you can go the whole day just on water. By determination and by purpose, just on water. That's Thirsty Thursday. Friday is Fasting Friday. Now, fasting doesn't necessarily have to be from food. Most times we fast from food, but it doesn't have to be from that. If you're accustomed to watching, 5 hours of television, if you've got that much time to watch 5 hours of television, maybe it's 5 hours of YouTube, maybe it's you're on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, and you're just wasting hours and hours in a while, just scrolling, laughing, and scrolling. Maybe fasting from technology, it can be from food if you want, but make a conscious decision to fast from something that you know is taking a big part of your day, a big part of your life on Friday even, Fasting Friday. And on Saturday, slow down Saturday. So take it easy. Stop what you're doing. Don't worry about work. Don't worry about bills. Don't worry about anything. It's going to be difficult because if you've learned to worry about certain things, it's going to come naturally. But slow down Saturday. If you're accustomed to going to church, then go to church. If you're not accustomed to going to church, but you'd like to see what church is like, find a church. If you can't go to church, maybe you could think about spending some time reading an educational Christian book. Just something that's going to put your mind at rest and on the master who has a plan for your health. That's Saturday. And then next Sunday, when we come back again, what I want you to do is it's called Selfless Sunday. Selfless Sunday. I want you to think about doing something good for someone else without thought of getting paid, without thought of for them doing something back to you, just because of the goodness of your heart, because you want to bless someone else. So again, Meatless Monday, Temperance Tuesday, Walking Thursday, Fasting Friday, Slow Down Saturday, Selfless Sunday. And then next Sunday, maybe we'll have some time at the end after the presenter's finished to see how we got on. Maybe actually, as we go through this week, if there are anybody who wants to share something, then maybe we can share with each other how we're getting on. Because we're in this together, we're on this journey together. We need to understand that our health is by choice, not by chance. The fact that we have healthy bodies doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice. And we need to be like Daniel was in the case study, Daniel chapter 1 and verse 8, that he purposed that he was going to have a healthy body. Our health is by choice, not by chance. So yes, Veronica, I see your question. Is there a handout? No, a slide for that? There will be. I just forgot to put it in the presentation today, but tomorrow there is a handout that will be in the slide, and I will email it out to you so you can print it off and you can stick it on your fridge, or you could stick it wherever. So we have a few more moments. Are there any questions, any points? Did it make Kistner? Yeah, I see your question. Can I get the recipes? Yeah, if you send an email or put your email in the chat, I can get you the recipes, and I'll get you them this evening so that you can think about what you want to cook for tomorrow. Yeah. Anybody have anything that they want to ask? Anything that they want to say?
And we use the mic to speak now.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know the meatless Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Then we need on Tuesday to keep meatless Monday and add on, not just go back to the meat.
Well,
Each day we're going to try to add on rather than go back. So if
that
we
is
give victory over Monday, we're still keeping it and going back. Yes.
if a person is able to do that, remember that everybody's on a different part of the journey. So I wouldn't want to put too much on a person all at once. Maybe if they've done it for 1 week, then maybe the second week it can be meatless Monday, meatless Tuesday, and then you just build that way. So yeah, I absolutely do agree with you, sister Marlene. I do agree with you. But I wouldn't want to right at the outset, because this is the first time people are hearing it. I wouldn't want to put too much upon them at this early stage. But thank you so much for the comment. Okay, it seems like we did it make sense? Did it make sense? Was it clear for you?
Yes, it was.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Praise God. Now there's a couple of minutes left. So I'm going to let me put it like this. Daniel chapter 1 has more significance to us right now than we possibly realize. So I hope you're going to catch what I'm about to throw to you. Okay? And you'll understand why. And I've tried to do it throughout the presentation. But I hope you're going to catch what I'm about to throw to you. So Daniel finds himself in a situation, in a crisis, where the head of state has mandated that he should put something into his body that he knows he shouldn't put in there. Now, it's fine for other people to make whatever decision they want, but Daniel decides that he wants to make a different decision. Now, there are some lessons that we can learn from Daniel as we traverse these days that we're in. Number one, Daniel was courteous to those who were just doing their job. Daniel was courteous to those who were just doing their job. You remember in the narrative it says that he beseeched the government officials, saying, look, I understand that you're just doing your job, but this is my position. Okay? So point number one, or principle number one, Daniel was courteous when he was making his decision to refuse. Just mute your mics for me again, and I'll bring you in. Was courteous when he was refusing what was being offered to him. Principle number two, if you're going to refuse, you're going to have to do things that promote health. If you're going to refuse, you're going to have to do things that promote health. Daniel didn't just refuse and said, you know what, I'm just going to refuse. He actually replaced what he was refusing with things that were promoting health. So again, Daniel was courteous to those who were just doing their job. He stood his ground, but he was courteous. And he did what promoted health because he refused. He didn't just refuse. Number three, we all of these principles we've gone through, but we've not really highlighted them as we're highlighting them now. Number three, he was wise in how he asked for what he wanted. He was wise in how he asked for what he wanted. Principle number four, he trusted God that he was going to get favor with those he needed to get favor with. He trusted God that he was going to get favor with those he was going to get favor with. Principle number five. Let me say it like this. Daniel was ready to give an answer. Daniel was ready to speak to those people that needed to hear about why he refused. And he was ready to give the reason and how he could do what he did and how he looked the way he looked. So, in fact, last principle, and then I'll recap them again. Last principle: Daniel prepared for the next challenge, because although in this narrative and in this what's the word I'm looking for, case study, it finishes with the king just being amazed and happy and promoting them. That wasn't the end of their story. There comes another situation that is going to test his character, going to test his resolve. So Daniel, after he did all that he did in Daniel in this case study in chapter 1 of Daniel, he prepares for the next challenge. So, number 1, Daniel was courteous with those who were just doing their job. Number 2, he did what he needed to do to promote health when he refused. 3, he I can't remember what 3 was. he trusted God to bring him into favor with those he needed to be brought into favor with. Number 4, he was willing to speak about why he did what he did and how he was able to look the way he looked because of what he did. And number 5, he prepared for the next challenge. I hope you're understanding what I'm catching. And the reason why I'm doing this is, if you've been with us over the last few weeks, you'll understand that we're not just on Zoom, we're on different platforms. And these different platforms are beginning to listen to what is being presented on these platforms and begin to curtail some of the program. So again, I hope by God's grace, it has been clear to you. Tomorrow, we're going to have a look at another case study. What did Daniel do when he was under acute stress? What did Daniel do when he was under acute stress? So thank you very much for your time. I pray it's been life-changing. Elder Palmer, Clive Palmer, should I say? It's over to yourself.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you. We've had a very interesting hour and a half. I hope you found it as interesting as I did, and in particular those challenges. Yeah, I think Andre used an interesting word at the beginning of this, and it's in the title. It says purposed. It's all about being purposed. So I guess we have to look at the challenge in that way. I'm purposing to do better. I'm purposing to move in a certain direction. And what we do know from the word of God is that God blesses our purpose. So we may not be where we want to be, but we're heading with a purpose, a sense of purpose in that direction. So thank you very much, Andre. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. We'll resume again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Please join us. Please have your notebooks ready. And I'm sure there'll be more enlightening messages coming from this case study on Daniel. Just going to ask that we just have a word of prayer before we go, as is our custom. Lord God, we thank you for the time spent. We thank you for the words of challenge, the words of caution. Lord, we all purpose to want to do better. We all want to live better, grow stronger, eat more healthily. And so, Lord, as we purpose to do just as Daniel did, may that be an inspiration. May we see the results in our lives of wanting to be purposed by you, because we ask these